Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. The other day I did a video assembling this chap here. This is a Space Marine Primaris Intercessor Sergeant with a slight customization of a hand swap in order to have him as a leader for my kill team, for Warhammer 40,000 kill team. But he's not much of a kill team on his own, so I'm just going to do a quick follow-up video assembling another character for his little team, his little band of brothers. And I'm going to be using another one of the easy build intercessors from the same sprue that he came from. It's actually going to be the third one from the set, which is a chap who's holding an Allspex. Now, a slight problem there is that an Allspex is a piece of kit which is not available to intercessors in kill team, so I'm going to have to do a little modification on him there. And also, while we're at it, I thought I might do a little head swap as well. So this video is it's just a simple put together of the miniature, but I'm going to do a basic head swap, and we're going to try and do a little weapon swap as well. Just to get rid of that piece of kit that he wouldn't actually have for kill team. So that's what we're going to do. If you watched my last video, you know that in order to do this, I will be using some Citadel glue, I will be using a craft knife, or a mould line remover, whichever takes me fancy, and my handy snips, my flashy Citadel handy dandy snips. If you subscribe to Warhammer 40,000 Conquest, with your first 2 issues, or your first bundle of issues, you get some plastic glue, a mould line remover, and a pair of snips as a free gift. You get these snips, which are just as effective as the other ones, but not quite as nice. Certainly not as expensive. So anyway, I have already looked at the assembly instructions for this particular chap, and I know that I need components 13 onwards. So you just locate the numbers on the sprues. You can see that each part has a number. And it is always a good idea to just cut out the components that you actually require. 13 is his little head there, which I'm thinking of swapping out anyway. But I will snip it. Don't lose your head. Don't roll away. Let's get that stuff out of shot for a minute. Just so that you can see what I'm doing here. I'm not going to clip everything off of the sprue all in one go. It's a pretty quick process, but it's a bit boring to watch. But clips, flat side, not flat side, flat side against the miniature, in at the connector points, and then just snip, in at the connector point, snip. Try and get as close as possible. Snip as neatly as possible. This is the reason that you require snips. If you try and do it with a knife, you're going to put pressure on the miniature. You may snap components, but more of a risk is putting pressure on a blade, which will then, snap, fire up into your eye or something. So don't use a knife. Don't use kitchen scissors because they're not accurate enough. And do not do what I'm about to do now. Some people do this. Oh, don't do that. Yeah, twisting. Some people say they twist and they have never had any problems with it, but do not risk it. Twisting puts pressure on the miniature. It leaves horrible scraggly bits, weaknesses in the plastic, and it's just increased risk of damaging stuff. And by the way, I do hope this is coming out okay. The light in here is awful today. I've tried to sort of get this as bright as possible, and I'll try and bump the brightness when I edit it later on as well. But hopefully you can see what I'm doing. It's not just a murky black mess. But yeah, don't twist. Don't twist. Don't hack at it with a knife. Get some clips. You don't have to get Citadel ones. Just get any old clips. I've said it before. I'll probably say it again because I'm boring and I don't have a lot of things to say. So anyway, he's out, and then you'll see where he clipped. There's a few little marks. This is where you use your mould line remover or a knife. If you're using a knife, obviously be very careful, and you just 45-degree angle and just scrape. The reason that this is a little bit more effective than a knife is because a knife blade will bend, and when you're dragging across the mold line, if the knife bends backwards slightly, then when it meets resistance of the nub of the plastic that's left from where you've cut, the knife will kind of bend back and then go up and over, and won't actually down, unless you put some sort of pressure behind the blade to keep it down. This being a sturdier, thick piece of metal, it doesn't bend backwards, which is why it is what it is, why it's more effective. I still tend to use a knife more often than not. I think it's just because I've used a knife for so long. I'd never had a mold line remover until I subscribed to Warhammer 40,000 Conquest, and yeah, I've managed with a knife all this time. So anyway, any obvious mold lines, whip them away. I'm going to cut away. When I cut back, I'll have all of the components removed from the sprue for you. And here are all those components removed from the sprue. We have the head, front section of the body, back section of the body, the two arms, the backpack, and then the base. Now, like I've already said, this hand is going to require some modification because I've got to get rid of that Allspex. And I'm going to do a little head swap because I want to. I want to make this guy look a little bit different. Now, what I've gone for in terms of the head swap, I suppose I should show you, before we start talking about head swaps, I will just show you, if you haven't seen one of these before, they have a peg. These are the easy build chaps that go together without glue, although I will be using glue anyway. They've got a peg which is actually shaped, and the hole in the torso is shaped so that the head, you put the head in one set in there, and then you push the back section on, and the way that the two pieces go together creates a specific shape hole which angles the head in a specific direction. So that's how they go together normally. I'm not going to use this head. I'm going to do a head swap, but in all other regards it's the same thing, except I will be using a head that doesn't have a peg, so I will be gluing the neck directly onto the top of the model there. What head am I going to use? I've got one of these funky old Heresy helmets. This is from Burning of Prospero, the same kit that the chainsword for Sergeant Greyhand came from. And I love these helmets. I do like the new Primaris designs. I like them a lot, but I do really like these old helmets here. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether a Primaris Space Marine could even wedge his giant bloated head into one of these old Heresy helmets, but what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a little bit of narrative and working on the rule of cool, really. This is a kill team. They've been fighting behind enemy lines, and they've been sort of cut off from regular supplies and things like that, and they sort of scrabble together and cobble together things to keep going. And this guy has somewhere along the line acquired this helmet, and so that's what I'm going to use, and I think it's going to look pretty awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away, because you don't need to see me gluing these bits together, but I'll glue it all together, the bits that I'm using, and then we'll come back and I will show you the head glued on, and then we'll talk about that hand and what I'm going to do about that Allspex. Back in a moment. You know what? I'm back a bit sooner than a moment. I've just glued the front and the back of this, the body together, and I thought I better just mention briefly. I've mentioned it in previous videos, but you know, it bears repeating. I'm using plastic glue. Plastic glue melts the plastic to form the bond, so you have to be very careful with it. You don't want to glob it all over the miniature, because it will actually scar the plastic. It can ruin the detail. It can take details straight off of the miniature if you spill enough of it on there. And so you only need a small amount. And when you're using it, especially with these easy builds. The easy build kits work on the basis they've got a hole in one piece and a peg on the other piece that marries up, and that's what you do. So you put a very, very small amount of glue in the hole. I'm trying to do this through the viewfinder and I've missed a little bit, but that's okay. So you just put a little bit of glue in the hole, and then it will go on. And that's what I'm doing now. Again, the way these pegs work on these miniatures is they are designed in such a way that they fit into a hole which is angled, and that forces the arm into a specific position. But you can cut the peg off and glue the arm directly onto the miniature, and then you can actually, you can make it so that this arm is coming down here or over here, or wherever you fancy it being, really. But up here is fine for this example. And now I really am going away for a moment. And here he is with his backpack on and his funky new head, and I quite like the look of that. So the only thing left to do now is the other arm. Like I said, the other arm is actually carrying a piece of equipment that he wouldn't have in Kill Team, so it needs to be removed. Now, my first thought was to replace it with a combat knife, but Intercessors don't have combat knives. It's not a piece of equipment you can give them in Kill Team, and while I'm not one of those sticklers for WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get, if someone came to play a game of Kill Team with me and they had an army of My Little Ponies that they said they were bringing to the table, I would say no. But if they had, an army of Space Marines, and they had a couple with bolters, and he said, well, actually they've got shotguns or whatever, I'm cool with that as long as they, we know up front. But having said that, WYSIWYG is easier because you're able to instantly grok what's going on the table. If a Marine has got a bolter, it's got a bolter. You don't have to go, well, hold on, is that a bolter or is that a missile launcher? And you don't get one of those moments where halfway through the game someone suddenly goes, oh, by the way, I'm just going to shoot you with this missile launcher that you probably forgot that I told you was a missile launcher because it's actually a bolt pistol on the model. So, I'm not a stickler for it, but I personally use it, and it just makes life a little bit easier. I'm one of those people, I very much like things to be as simple as possible, and Games Workshop tend to make things as simple as possible by basically saying what you see on the miniature is what you get. I'm all for pushing all the rules off the table so that you've just got the fun game, the fun experience. So this is coming off, and couldn't replace it with a knife, but I could replace it with a bolt pistol. I looked through all my bits box. This is the only bolt pistol I could find. Heresy era again, I believe. And you will notice the hand on it is a right hand, but I require a left hand. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to snip the top of the Auspex off. I'm going to carefully cut the hand off of the bolt pistol, and then we're going to see how that marries up, and we'll see what that looks like, and if it looks awful, we'll have a little rethink again. But this is plan A. When you're cutting little bits off of models like this, use a combination of snips and things on certain bits, and a little hacksaw, fine-tooth hacksaw. Don't try and do it with a knife for the same reason you don't want to be cutting things off of a sprue with a knife. Knives are dangerous. And don't run with scissors either. I'll be back in a moment. And so, after much snipping and clipping and filing, and then a little bit of gluing, this is what we've got. Now, you can see what I've done is I cut the original hand off of the bolt gun. I left the lower part of the Auspex on to begin with, but it was way too big. It made it look ridiculous. So I clipped off most of it and sort of filed it down so it just looked like it was just the bottom part of the bolt pistol, and that's a reasonable sort of take. I could have snipped this off completely and then tried to snip off the bottom of the handle on the actual bolt pistol component, but it didn't seem worth the effort. I was able just to reshape that, and I think that looks good enough. And now all we have to do is stick it on. With this, I'm not going to worry too much about the angle of the arm. Like I mentioned before, these pegs make it so that the arms go on in a specific sort of a way. But I believe that the way that this hand is going to go on, I've got to be careful because the glue's probably still a little bit wet on the gun. But I think that this hand will go on in roughly the sort of position that I would want it to be anyway. Drop that. This is why I do most of the gluing and cutting off camera, because trying to do it through a viewfinder is a nightmare. Squeeze on. And there we go. One Intercessor with a bolt pistol, and his big gun, the name of which eludes me at the moment, fancy bolt rifle. And there you go. Very simple conversion. Obviously it relied on having the components to hand, and that, but the bolt pistol is a good example of having something, not quite having the component I needed, but being able to fudge a piece to make it work. And I don't think that's too bad, all told. I think that looks pretty okay. He will just be glued onto his base now. All that will require is a drop of glue on the foot, on the bottom of the foot, and then he goes into the slotter base. Because the easy build kits are supposed to be able to go together without glue, they have the slotter bases. Other Games Workshop miniatures don't have slotter bases, and that's just something to be aware of when you're buying miniatures. And there we go. So that is my second member of my kill team. That's just a regular Intercessor, armed to the teeth, gun in each hand. He's John Wooin for victory, and that is all I've got to say on that. Thank you very much for watching. I'm probably not going to do too many more of these easy build conversion videos. I don't think I have much more of interest to say to people, but if there's anything people would like to see, or if there's anything people would like to know more about, if there's any questions people have, I am hardly the font of all knowledge when it comes to this sort of stuff. I tend to just muddle through, but if you do have any questions that you think I might have some vague answer to, do feel free to ask down in the comments section, and I will do my very best to help you out, or to point you in the direction of somebody more knowledgeable than me. Thank you very much, everybody, and bye bye.